right, it looks like it's 2 o'clock, so we're going to get started right on time so that we um, stand true to our half an hour webinar here for you today. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the first ever Let's Fix It discussion with the auditor webinar. My name is Vanessa Holen and I am the Internal Audit Manager for NPERS. Also with me today is Caitlin Glenn, our newest NPERS auditor. Caitlin and Cassie are responsible for conducting the employer audits and will be the ones reaching out to the employers when it is your turn for a retirement audit. Also with us today is Heather Critchfield-Smith, the Educational Services Manager. She is there hopefully to help us along the way if we get into any snags with this webinar here. We are hoping to make this a regular opportunity, but we wanted to first do a test run and see if it's something that people are interested in and if the time allotted is sufficient. My goal is to have a short webinar to address specific topics beneficial to all. Before we begin, I want to highlight some housekeeping items. As you have probably noticed, all participant cameras are off, as well as all microphones are muted. The goal of the webinar is not for an open discussion with specifics about your particular situation, because if you have ever asked a question to our team before, you probably know that we tend to follow up with multiple questions, leading to a much larger, longer discussion. Because every situation is facts and circumstances specific, we want to keep these webinars broad enough to help everyone. With that being said, if you do have a question along the way, feel free to put them in the chat box, and either Caitlin or Heather will do their best to answer them if it's something general. If it is something that they think the group should hear, we hope to have a little time at the end to address it for everyone. Clarification questions over something I have said are certainly welcome, and we will do our best to answer those along the way. But if it is something specific to you, your situation, it's going to require a lot of back and forth. We will follow up after and make sure that your questions get answered. We have been asked multiple times if this is going to be recorded. It is being recorded, and the goal is to have it put on the website following the webinar. Please remember that we are your audit team at NPERS and not the amazing Educational Services Department that have expertise in offering educational components and webinars. So if there are mishaps along the way, please be patient with us today. If there are any certain topics that you would like to see, feel free to email npers.audit@nebraska.gov. Caitlin, if you could drop that email into the chat box for reference, that would be great. You should all have that email, as it was also the email address attached to the invite for this webinar. Now that we have gone over all of those beginning points, let's jump right in. Today, I did not create an official presentation on PowerPoint, but rather thought it would be beneficial to take you directly to our website to explore the latest school plan tool, the eligibility checklist. I did send an email out previously with the link for the checklist, but the webinar is a perfect opportunity to go over the tool in depth and provide some explanations. Hopefully by now you have all been able to explore our newly designed website, and if not, this will give you the walkthrough for how to navigate it. When you are on our main page, you're going to go over here to Employer Reports, the drop down to Nebraska Schools. Once on the school's reporting homepage, you will find any important legislation information up top. As you scroll down even further, you will find the LB 147 video. And then even further than that, you will find the latest school plan employer reporting workshop webinar video. This has a lot of great information for any NPERS reporting agent. If you weren't able to make it in person or attend the webinar, this video walks you through all the important information we shared over the last workshop season for our educational services team, our NPERS employer reporting accounting agent, and our audit team. The information within this workshop includes legislative updates, common report errors and fixes when uploading your report, and information on the most consistent audit findings. If you scroll a little past this video, you can also watch the last couple of years' workshops as well. When you click on these, it will take you to our YouTube page where you can view or subscribe and have lots of information right at the tips of your fingers. Moving past the videos, there is a calculator tool. We will go over this later. Right past that are substitute and extra duty logs. These were created in 2021 just as a tool. They're created to assist employers in getting employees to fill out and submit their time. Again, only a tool, not required. You can use whatever your school has, but they're here if you need. Directly underneath that is another video that walks you through the school plan and the audit process. Scrolling down even further, you can find the annual retirement reports and the audit newsletters. These items are sent out to reporting agents, but are also placed here in case your email box gets as full as mine and you might have missed it. These documents both contain important notes and reminders for members. Now to why we are here today. The NPER School Plan Eligibility Checklist is the first bolded link item at the bottom of the page. If you remember before, we had an eligibility flowchart that offered questions, and depending on how you answered the question, it would send you to a different screen, ultimately providing guidance on the eligibility of an employee upon hire or rehire. The flowchart was an amazing tool for a really long time. Its creation in 2013 helped significantly and was something that we even used internally here at NPERS. As laws changed and reporting agent needs changed, we were asked multiple times to provide a tool where reporting agents could print and save as a paper copy or save as electronically in an employee's file to demonstrate why you either did or did not begin contributions, hence the employee checklist. We first made this type of tool for the county plan, and it has been really well received. We're hoping that it can be equally as useful to you. This checklist is a fillable PDF format that can be used instantly. When you click on it, it will pull up the document to be printed or save as. Remember, if you are going to use this tool, to always pull it from the website and don't just store it on your computer. That way, if and really when laws change, this document can be changed so that you will always have the latest version. Remember that this is a tool, not a requirement, so it is up to you how much or little you fill out. Taking the checklist from the top, it has a direct link to the school manual. Within the manual, you should be able to find answers to most of your questions, and the table of contents also has direct links to take you immediately to the section you need. Before the checklist itself gets into the questions, we try to provide some important information and definitions that are paramount to know when determining eligibility. One of the biggest components to understanding the school plan is breaking down the position employment classifications for retirement purposes. If you attended the last workshops, you would have heard the same thing there as well. I'm just going to work them from the bottom up and go over them here today. So first you have your temporary employee. That is defined in statute as someone that is hired for a period of time to complete a task. When the task is complete, the employment is terminated, not to exceed 1 year, not an eligible position. Then we have our substitutes. Defined in statute as a temporary employee that is hired to temporarily fill in for a regular employee that is temporarily absent. This is important to remember for termination of employment rules because you need to make sure the 8 days of substitute service allowed are individuals filling in for a regular employee and not a vacant position. Substitutes are also not eligible for retirement. Then we have our regular employees. If the employment does not fall under temporary or substitute, it will fall under regular category. Regular employees are the only eligible employees. It's also important to note that generally speaking, coaching and extra duty service is considered regular service, as the statute declares that service is not terminated by seasonal or temporary suspension of service. The highlighted italicized portion underneath explains how if an employee is in any regular position, then they are considered a regular employee. And all service combined needs to be tracked for eligibility or reported to retirement if they are already contributing. What that is saying is if you have a volleyball coach that also provides substitute hours, you would add those hours together to track for eligibility. Or if they're already contributing, then you would add those hours together and report hours and wages for both. We then highlight what a bona fide termination currently is in statute and how to ensure that you have one. Remember that if LB 198 passes in the legislature this session, this component will change and will only be for members that are taking a distribution. Currently, however, let's walk through it. You must have a bona fide termination to either stop contributions or take a distribution. This means that if you have a regular contributing employee that is a para, and they would want to terminate their para position and continue employment as only a substitute, they need to adhere to the termination of employment rules. Now, we know that this has caused a lot of confusion, but it's important that everyone does it the same. This came up because we had to start testing termination of employment after LB 147 passed, and schools were all doing it differently. And using the same scenario above with the para position, some schools would continue to contribute on the substitute pay, but the substitutes rendered less than 8 days of service a month. Some schools would continue to contribute on the substitute pay, but the substitutes rendered more than 8 days. Some schools stopped contributions on the substitute pay, but the substitutes rendered less than 8 days. And some stopped contributions on the substitute pay, but the substitutes rendered more than 8 days of service. So because the school plan has a definitely determinable benefit, which means that the benefit you receive is based on the plan documents and not the employer itself, we need to make sure that employees in similar situations are treated similarly and will receive a similar benefit. This is important to ensure someone working as only a substitute in a district that reported all substitute wages and hours does not have a substantially larger benefit based on those wages and service credit reported than a substitute in a different district rendering the same service that did not report the wages and hours. Below the bona fide termination definition, you will find the distribution definition that helps us to define and remember that a distribution does not only refer to someone taking the retirement benefit, and that it also includes any refund or rollover as well. This is important as many of us clearly understand when someone is at a retirement age and they're going to be taking their benefit. But sometimes we forget about those other employees that have taken a refund or a rollover. Now we're on to the questions. So, is the person 18 years old? That's easy enough. If they're not eligible. If they are, we move to question 2. Is the person a citizen or a qualified alien? If the employee is not a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, you must contact NPERS for verification of eligibility. We have added the link to the Immigration Eligibility Guide directly here on the checklist. There is a lot of great information on this document explaining how NPERS requested an AG's opinion on how to interpret the statute, allowing qualified aliens to participate. The opinion was received in August 2022 and outlined a process in which NPERS would need to use to determine eligibility. Now, if you scroll to this last page here, number 4, this provides you with the information you need to know. As the law is today, you need to obtain either an unexpired EAD card or an unexpired passport and visa from anyone that is not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. Once you have the documentation, you would obtain a share file link from NPERS, and then you upload those documents. NPERS will review the documentation, provide you an eligibility determination. Once that eligibility determination is made, that's when contributions would start. Good news, in the legislative session, if LB 198 passes, it incorporates LB 378, which would also have a process change that significantly helps. It will allow the employer to be able to verify that the employee has a Nebraska state ID, a license, any number of documents, and then they can move on to question number 3. NPERS will keep everyone updated on the bills that pass this year and provide education as to how those changes will impact the plans. So once we're able to get past question 2, it will take you through those job classifications that we went over. The important piece to these is to remember to read all of the notes listed under the answer you check. For example, on question number 3, using the para to substitute scenario previously discussed, you would mark yes for substitute. Then read through. For the second bullet, it explains that if the employee is within 180 days from the termination date of their regular employment at any school plan employer, then they must incur a bona fide termination to stop contributions. This takes you back to the top, where you can then read over the bona fide termination and know that they can only render 8 days of substitute service a month for 180 days. Question number 4 provides you the same note if you choose yes. So let's change the scenario a bit. You have a para who is terminating their position at the end of the school year. During the summer, however, you have no one to mow lawns. Your former para employee agrees to come back and help out during the summer only for June and July. So you are filling out the sheet and easily get through the first 3 questions. Question 4, you answer yes to because they are only there for one summer, no anticipation to come back or plans to return the following summer. And reading the second bullet, after yes, it tells you that if the employee is within 180 days from termination of the regular service, they must have a bona fide termination to stop contributions. Going back up to the top again, we can see the definition for bona fide termination. This is not telling you that they cannot be a temporary employee, but is saying, as this situation is outside of substitute service, what is required for termination, and within 180 days, you would continue contributing. We understand that this can get a little confusing, which is why that third bullet is there and suggests that you contact NPERS if you have any further questions. Okay, let's change the scenario even further. Let's say you have the same full-time contributing para that terminated at the end of the year. This former para took 2 years off to pursue other life goals and then decided to come back as a para. But instead of full-time hours, now they only want to work 15 hours a week. So the first 4 questions are answered easily. Yes, they are 18. Yes, they are a citizen. No, they are not a substitute. And no, they are not temporary. So this takes us to question 5. Has the person taken a distribution? This question gets missed frequently, and it is extremely important when determining eligibility. If they have not taken a distribution, you can see that it tells you to proceed to question 7. Now we have to establish if the employee has participated in the school plan at your school before. If they have, then it is mandatory for them to go into the plan, regardless of how many hours they will be working. So going back to question 5, if the same para did take a refund of their account during those 2 years, right after they terminated, then you answer yes, and you're directed to question 6. At that point, we need to confirm if 180 days have passed since their termination of regular employment. For this scenario, far beyond the 180 days have passed. So then we're directed to question 8. Question 8 asks you about the intention of hours to be worked upon hire. As the intention is 15 hours a week, we would mark no. Under no, you will receive several notes on how to proceed to track hours and determine eligibility. Within this answer, you can find the link to the eligibility calculator. This is the tool we skipped over earlier in looking at the website. It was also created in 2021 to help school plan employers determine eligibility based on the hours threshold for meeting participation when an employee works an average of 20 hours a week in any 3 calendar months of the plan year, July through June, and these months do not need to be consecutive. This tool uses the formula we have listed in the employee handbook. This formula takes the total number of hours worked in a calendar month divided by the actual number of hours in the month, multiplied by 7 days a week. You simply enter the number of hours worked in the calendar month, and the tool will notify you if it's a qualifying month. And even further, it will tell you if you have met the hours threshold. So at 80 hours, we're not meeting it. At 88, for some months, depending on the number of days in the month, we have 3 qualifying months, and then it's going to give you that alert that you need to put them in the next payroll period. At the bottom of the page are things that can help you if you are going to use this tool along with the employee. There is a checkbox for the understanding that they are mandatorily required to participate. There's another checkbox for the understanding that they are not participating, and the only way to participate in the future is by meeting mandatory enrollment requirements. There is a place for signatures so that you can have the form be as formal as you would like. These items were all added from requests from employers so that you can have documentation that the employee was also aware of the requirements, why they were or were not in the plan, and that they understand if they are or are not in the plan. Again, feel free to save as and file them electronically, print it off, save it in a paper file, whatever works for you. Hopefully, this tool can be beneficial for you to use, and remember that we are here to help and support you. If there are things that need clarifications or edits, do not hesitate to reach out. In production of this tool, we reached out to several employers and requested their suggestions and input, along with internal staff here at NPERS. So we are hoping that the kinks have been worked out for you. But if you find something, don't hesitate to reach out. I say all of that knowing that when this legislative session is over, we will probably have multiple things that need to be changed on here. Know that we are currently working on a draft to be ready to go once that's changed. If that's not quite done and you get on the website and you're trying to find this tool, it just means we've taken it down. Some things have been passed. It's not accurate, current, up to date yet, and we'll get that out as soon as we can. Any questions, again, that npers.audit@nebraska.gov can get you our audit team to help you with that. And that is your eligibility checklist. We can open it up for some clarifying questions or any questions that people may have for the whole group. Caitlin, is there anything in the chat box?
No, not that I see.
Okay. Well, we will probably give it another minute here And if nothing comes up, that will conclude today's webinar. It is recorded. We will have it up on the website. And again, any questions in the future, that's why those notes are on the checklist. If there's something that's confusing, I do understand the scenario that I used is pretty simple. And a lot of times it's very facts and circumstances specific. We have to know further, and it doesn't align with just this checklist, but we're hoping that this can at least give you that base knowledge and that helpful tool.
So
All right.
Roxanne has asked, where do we find the monitoring document?
Absolutely. Let's go back to the website. And I'm just going to take you through. Here's the home page to our website. This employer reports down to Nebraska schools. This is your home page. Scroll all the way down here. And it's this big highlighted here. So calculator tool, monitoring hours worked for eligibility. You can click on that here. From here, you can download the file, or it is also on this eligibility checklist. So 2 different links on there for you, all the way at the bottom here. Any other questions, Caitlin?
No other questions so far. Oh, one just popped in. Does the eligibility form have to have the employee's signature?
Nope. So remember, this is just a tool. These at the bottom are things that were asked from employers where they have issues with an employee thought that they were enrolled and they never were, and they don't understand why, or an employee didn't understand that they were enrolled. So this is all optional. The top is all optional. These things are on here so that if you want to have this a formal document in the employee's file, you can have them sign it. You can make it as formal as needed, but none of this, not even using this, is mandatory. It's just a tool for you.
So they clarified and meant the extra duty log. Does that need to be signed?
No, no, those are all just tools as well. Those are things they were created by auditors, right? And auditors want the most documentation that we can get. We will always say, where's your documentation? Do you have documentation? So in our ideal world, we would have it signed, we would have all of that, but really just having those hours logged is important.
And then Kelly asked, once we download the form, where'd I go? Once we download the form, can we edit those items?
Which form are we talking about? The eligibility one? The checklist?
Well, I am not sure. There we go. The optional items. Yes, the eligibility.
It, it, I'm sure she could if she has PDF, if she has a way to manipulate PDF, she could, or she could also just reach out to us. I can provide one without that on there as well. I mean, it's not a necessary thing. In Adobe, you should be able to do it. I know there's lots of different software that could do it as well.
They said great, thank you.
You bet.
There's a pretty specific employee that we might, or a question from Hillary that we might want to just reach out for, but those are the
Okay,
general ones.
perfect. Hillary, we will reach out to you after this and make sure that we get your questions answered. We're coming up on 30 minutes. I really want to be cognizant of people's time and respectful of that. I appreciate everybody that attended today. There will be a survey. I know it's not the most fun and entertaining as your educational services department will provide, but we think it's important information to get out there. So if you have questions, let us know, but I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you everyone for coming today.